There's like 2 bulges.
You just said
Because I have a
Steve's fault.
puncher.
Yes, Steve, you have to hold it.
Man, can't take you anywhere. Can't trust you.
I can't deal with like.
My name is.
Yeah, the name is
I
there.
can't deal with that stuff, too. Are we good? We're good. All right. Drew, you're good? All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February 8th meeting of the Board of Selectmen. If you could please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm glad to see that the right side of the board has finally got their seats figured out. Thank you. It's only been a year. All right, first thing up tonight, we're going to do meetings, the minutes of the regular meeting of January 25th. Any discussion? If not, I'd love to hear a motion. Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Patsy. Again, we are back in person, thankfully, so you don't have to do roll call. Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Approved. Next up, select person Zarowski. Community relations. Projects.
Announcements for today. 2022 dog licenses are now available at town clerk's office during business hours, or online application can be mailed or dropped in Dropbox, or payment can be made at the town website. Online payments are also accepted. Nomination papers available in Charlton Town's clerk's office starting February 7th. Due back to town clerk no later than March 18th by 5 p.m. Charlton Town election is Saturday, May 7th from 8 to 8, Heritage School. All the information and the list of seats that are available are at the town website. Rabies Vaccination Clinic, February 12, 2022. This is from 9 to 12 at Charlton Animal Shelter at 15 Old Town Road in Charlton. Cats must be in carriers and dogs must be leashed. The town clerk's office will conveniently be open at the same time to renew dog licenses. Volunteers sought for Government Study Review Committee. The Board of Selectmen seeks residents to review the 2016 Government Study White Paper report and report on progress made and further changes that should be considered. Those interested in serving on the committee should submit a talent bag form to Executive Assistant Mary Devlin at mary.devlin@townofcharlton.net. I believe those forms are on the website itself too. On Thursday, February 10th, 2022, from 2:30 to 3:30 p.m., the Charlton Public Library presents Chicken Around the World with Lindsay Spratt. In this program for all ages, participants get to meet Lindsay's feathered friends from around the world. You will learn about the history and unique characteristics of the breeds and the basics of caring for chickens in your own backyard. This program will be held in Dexter Hall. Register online from the library website, charltonlibrary.org. This is sponsored by the Friends of the Charlton Library. And last but not least, Charlton Police Department is enforcing pedestrian safety for the month of February with NHTSA federal funds through EOPSS program. I lied one more. That was the Dementia Friendly Charlton Initiative. This is the Council on Aging is searching for interested department heads, boards, or committee members, local businesses, organizations, or individual to be on a dementia-friendly committee. Dementia-friendly Massachusetts is the initiative of the Massachusetts Councils on Aging and a member of Dementia-Friendly America. The communities address the needs specific to their residents, advocating for dementia awareness and providing services, programs, and public spaces that support people with dementia and their care partners. This working group would help to define what it means to the town of Charlton to become dementia friendly. As every community is different, one of the first steps is for a working group to do a needs assessment. Once the needs are identified, the group would work with the representative from the Alzheimer's Association to educate residents, employees, and businesses and offer support groups and trainings amongst the activities and supportive resources. If you or someone you know may be interested in being on the committee or would like more information, please contact Council of Aging Director Elaine Materas at 508-248-2231 or email her directly at elaine.materas@townofcharlton.net. Your support will be greatly appreciated. Elaine is also at the senior center almost every day, and she's wonderful and eager to help others. So please consider.
Well done, Basha. Thank you. Any other announcements from the board?
Sir. Just a thank you to Steve, Paxton, and Basha for the successful Make Ariel Smile fundraiser that they championed. That's a lot of work.
Very well done. I know there was an enormous turnout, so again, fantastic job. And obviously, our thoughts and prayers out with Ariel as she goes through her next step.
Pretty impressed that all of us did it.
Right? And we got a
All of
lot.
us were there.
Yeah.
Everybody, yeah.
Together.
All right.
The town really turned out very well.
No, absolutely.
It's heartfelt to see the town react to it. That's good.
Cindy, you have anything you want to talk around during that community forum? Next up, we're doing appointments, which are always nice. To Andrew Maternity.
Attaches a Talent form from Cedric Flowers seeking to be appointed to the Old Home Day Committee. The Old Home Day Committee would recommend that the board make the appointment, and I concur.
Thoughts on the board? Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Cedric, welcome and thanks for all you do around town. Next up, government study.
Attach our Talent forms from James Lee and Adam Kelly seeking to be appointed to the Government Study Committee. I recommend the board make the appointments.
Thoughts on the board?
So moved.
Do I have a Second. Second from Basha. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Mr. Nee, Mr. Kelly, thank you very much. Looking forward to see what you guys come back with. We are ahead of schedule, which is always nice. Nita, how'd you feel about doing your select person report?
Yeah, of course. All right. So not much going on at Shepherd Hill, but the academic decathlon team just competed at regionals on Saturday, February 5th. And they went through a test taking objective round on all the content of the study and an interview and speech portion called the subjective round, scored by the panel judges, and they did really well. Moving on to driver education classes. So the February class is full and it filled up really fast. So if you're looking for the driver's education class, the next class will be open in May and registration will be open in March, and any of the information is on the Shepherd Hill driver education page. And we just finished, finally, I've been talking about this for like a month, the Alice Wonderland in Glass just performed, and they sold 137 tickets and did well for only having one show because of COVID and the snow. There was a lot of snow that weekend. So Shepherd Hill Athletics, the winter update. Our winter season is well beyond the halfway mark, with each of our teams experienced marks of success in their respective conferences. So the boys basketball is doing really well. They have a game tonight, so good luck, boys. And they sit at a resounding 9-2 record at this time of the winning, so hopefully they win this game. And they're at the 25 power ranking in their division statewide, so that's really good. Meanwhile, girls basketball is also set 9-2 ranking in their division statewide. And the statewide division power ranking for them is 31. So indoor track continues to impress, defeating league rivals like Shrewsbury and setting school records. And wrestling and cheer practices every day for their tournaments as scheduled. So just a reminder about yearbooks. So they're now $100 in February, so order that before they're all out. And some student council information. So student council for the spring is really working on having a lot of activities for people because of COVID. In the wintertime, it's hard to do like dances and such, and we're supposed to have a lot of that. So they're working of getting a lot of fun things finalized. So I'll be bringing that soon. And lastly, the Q2 report cards just came out. So hopefully everyone did good. And Q3 began last week. So let's have a good start with our grades, and the year is halfway up. So let's just make the most of it. That's all.
Well, then, thank you. And I'm assuming, Basha, that everyone did do well on the report.
Still will remain sheltered.
Okay.
So-
They still have a roof over there.
Thank you, Nina. I appreciate it. Skipping down to number 12, we're going to do the TA report. Mr. Bowles.
All right, so update on the mask mandate for town buildings. The Board of Health had voted at their February 1st meeting to rescind the requirement for masks in municipal buildings. We're still recommending those who may be immunocompromised or have had direct exposure to somebody within the previous 10 days to continue to wear masks. This line should remain non-symptomatic. Certificate of Achievement. So just want to congratulate Rose Conway, our Conservation and Stormwater Director Apprentice, on receiving her Certificate of Achievement for successfully completing 8 units of the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commission program. The program provides basic knowledge and practical tools to carry out the mission and responsibilities of administering the Wetlands Protection Act and open space planning. So congratulations, Rose. DPW Director Superintendent Jerry Foskett had notified me that the need to deficit spend the snow and ice budget was needed, and just notifying the board that he approved the request to declare the snow emergency, which would allow the deficit spending of snow and ice operations for the remainder of the fiscal year.
Sorry, just for those folks in the audience and at home, just a reminder, snow and ice is the only line item that we can deficit spend without approval. So we basically just make up for it at one of the future town meetings. So we never basically shortchange storms. We always make sure that things are taken care of. So that's why we are deficit spending.
Just an update on our Route 20 corridor study update. So on February 2nd, Randy Benson and I did a site walk with representatives from VHB, who's going to be performing a targeted development study of the Route 20 corridor. And this was funded under a Community Compact Best Practice Grant Program. The study is going to target development in the Charlton City area to try to connect ancillary businesses to the future Amazon site. And the final program will also be used as an economic development tool to try to attract businesses in this area. So we have a target of June 2022 to complete the program. So looking forward to getting that to you guys. Update on the Main Street sidewalks. So part of the community partnership agreement with Amazon was the town is to receive $1.5 million towards sidewalk and streetscape improvements in the Main Street area. And thanks to a complete streets grant that we had previously received from the planning department, we've already engaged in the preliminary design phase of that. So that way when the money does start coming in, we can basically hit the ground running. Master plan, as you guys remember, a couple of years ago, we appropriated some funding at a special town meeting to allocate toward the master plan. That was basically update the one that was done back in 2008. I know the planning board is going to be recommending the appointment of a steering committee to guide the effort of creating the new master plan. So I'll keep you guys updated when we move forward with that, but I believe it'll be after they finish their zoning diagnostic review. And just wanted to extend a special word of appreciation to the Highway Division for tackling this last really batches of storms between ice and snowmageddon, bomb tornadoes, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, they were out basically flat for the last couple of weeks. So just wanted to kind of thank them for their help in keeping towns roads wide open.
Questions, Randy? Cindy, are all you folks? Or should you want to wait? All right, why don't we talk? Let's go to schedule appointment 6:45 with the Council on Aging. And we welcome their spokespeople. Cindy, everyone knows you, but you can just be officials for the people at home.
I'm Cindy Cooper, Chairman of the Council on Aging. The rest of the board is here. They're being shy.
I'd rather come sit with you guys, to be honest with you. It would just be much easier.
We wanted to update you on looking for space for a senior center. The Council on Aging has been looking for more space for a senior center for a long time. In 2008, the Senior Center Building Committee was formed and worked with an architect to come up with some plans space-wise, not the actual plans of what something would look like, but how much space would be needed for the various services. The architect listed the space needed for the senior center as totaling 10,245 square feet. Based on that list, the current Council on Aging compared the current senior center with a list of needs. And I'd like to
We talked about it.
I'm not going to go over the entire list, but I would like to let you know that right now, the dining area seats about 80 people. The number of people in Charlton who are 60 years older, 60 years and older has been increasing. According to the US Census in 2020, they were 14.8% of Charlton's population. We need a lot more space for not only seating for meals, but for events, for activities, for library space, exercise space, and we have an opportunity now. So at the Council on Aging special meeting held on January 11th, the board unanimously voted in favor of a motion that would like the Charlton Board of Selectmen to consider acquiring the Charlton furniture property for conversion to a new Charlton Senior Center. That piece of property has at least 12,000 square feet in one of the buildings, and there is another building, but that would meet the needs that were described starting in 2008, as well as the ones that are more contemporary, that come up as time goes on, the spaces that are needed. One of the things that is difficult about the current configuration has to do with handicap accessibility. Although it is handicap accessible, if somebody parked out in the front area, they'd have to go down an elevator to a ramp to get into the senior center, or if they wanted to talk with one of the people on the board, they'd need to go to the office down a long corridor. It's not convenient and not easy for some people who have limited mobility. The Charlton furniture property is all on one level and already has some of the amenities that would be needed for a senior center, such as handicap restrooms and a loading dock for the kitchen area. Also like to let you know that the Friendly Friends 50C3 nonprofit organization has a mission to help support the needs of the senior center and long-term look toward the future of building a new senior center. So they've already started fundraising for such a purpose. Have you got any questions, comments?
I have a question. So you said there's two buildings, so you're planning to occupy both buildings?
Both buildings would be on the one lot. Currently, there are 3 buildings on that property. One of them would be used for some other purpose by some other group of people.
I'm assuming that would be the annex or the old Charlton furniture
The
annex.
the older building would not be part of what is being offered or would be potentially purchased by the town.
So the purchase price, the price of the building will be 2 million, right? The 4 million is the whole entire project.
That's not the entire project, no. That would be the purchase price. That would be the purchase price.
Purchase price.
Oh, so that's not the building we were talking
I
about.
think the price that you were that
Pardon?
was just that, it says for the purchase of the building was like 2 million, and then potential renovation costs back at, basically high-end
That's the
but
same.
estimated would be another 2. So the total
Yes.
in project cost would be 4.
So that's the same building we talked about last meeting?
Correct, yes. Or the same site.
Same size.
Same site.
Other questions for Cindy?
Yeah, as far as going up to the top of Dresser Hill Road, I always kind of assumed the senior center, the seniors like the idea of being around the common or local to the housing authority and some other things. Do you think, was there any discussion about
About
People-
access.
access up the hill and people frown upon having to travel that far? But that's a little bit of a distance.
We have spoken with people who attend different activities at the senior center, and have not heard that the location has been a major issue. I'm not saying it's not an issue at all, that some people may need to find different transportation, but it's not one that came up as being a major issue.
Questions before we have a conversation?
When we voted on it, I thought the price tag was 4 to 5 million.
That's for including the restoration. For fixing it up.
All those buildings, all those outbuildings, all of them, just the one.
So, yeah, so it sounds like the purchase price, and again, these are all approximations at this point, but from what I'm hearing and what we've been able to glean, it'd be around $2 million, give or take, for the actual property purchase. And then anywhere from, let's just say, 2 to 3 for renovations. Obviously, that's a, order of magnitude estimate at this point, but it's, it's probably a fair estimate to assume for discussion's sake, it's probably between, let's say, $3.5 to $5 million all in. I think that's probably fair unless anyone disagrees.
It's a wide range.
Yeah, but it's probably healthy enough to at least be able to have a conversation. So Cindy, I think you deserve absolute candor. I appreciate everything that you and the council did. Here's the difficulty, and I'm sure that you know where I'm going with this. Schools just came in and asked for multi-million dollars as phase 1 of, I'm sure, what is a multi-generational plan, which will eventually lead to significant renovations up at the hill, i.e. Shepherd Hill, which is going to be a big hit if it passes. Additionally, we still have the fire station that needs to be resolved, longer term strategy. Never mind Station 2 with its mold problems that we're going to have a discussion in the next few months once we figure that out. Police station needs some additional work, and there's multiple other needs. And I'm not saying this is not up there, but what we've heard very loud, at least what I should say, what I've heard very loud and clear from our residents is that they don't want tax hikes. And the only way that we'd be able to fund this is via debt exclusion. And I just can't support that at this point. Alternatively, we could go underneath and use the operating budget or potentially opera funds, but basically we're stealing from Peter to pay Paul at that point. Because one of the ideas that we think around the schools is that we could potentially use opera funds for that. So at the end of the day, it's going to cause an issue. Unless we stay within the operating budget, which would be significant cuts to existing programs across the way. Because we've been looking to fund $4 to $5 million over a period of X years. And the only way to do that is going to be to potentially cut funds. Unless we consider using additional resources down the road, Amazon, Walmart, LNG, regardless of what it is. But we haven't even had that strategic conversation yet. So again, I just want to be candid with you. I can't back this right now. I think it's a wonderful idea. If we had all of our ducks in a row over the past 30 years and we had made all these capital investments and that we were clean, for a clean slate to be able to say, you know what, we do have this extra revenue, we probably could use it. It's a much different conversation. But right now, knowing our priority list of really things that absolutely are going to need to get done, I just don't see this ranking in the top 4 or 5 that would have me say, yes, let's go forward. But again, that's just me, but I welcome, your thoughts as well.
This opportunity is a once in a lifetime. The building is already there. The parking area is already there. There are so many amenities that are going to be needed for a growing senior population, and there's room for them to be there. Now would be the time to get it, as opposed to getting a piece of property and building, which I think, and many of the people that we have spoken to have said would cost more because of the site work that would be necessary at many of the places. This opportunity doesn't always occur. Would you have any problem with asking at town meeting, putting it on the warrant and letting the people decide?
I think you'd be asking just to purchase the property at that point. So if it's on the market for $2 million, we're not talking about the 5, we're talking about 2, right? Just to make sure we reserve the property.
Once you make the investment of the millions to buy the property, you're pretty much getting to the info. I'm just gonna throw out there. Yeah, you know, I do agree with Cindy and Mr. Borowski. And I think you may have left out the middle school, which is $2 million because the roof's leaking. So we need to go up $2 million for that as well. We can't put it off the school's leaking. I appreciate once in a lifetime opportunities, but if we don't have the money to pay for it, it's something we can take advantage of. Where I agree with you on the need, I agree with you on we can't pay for it. You know, hopefully, while it's not the best, doesn't provide a solution today. I don't like to spend money we don't have. But fingers crossed, if we break ground, if it's happening, and we do start seeing revenue from Amazon in a year, you know, I'm hoping there might be other opportunities to acquire a senior center, even if we had to build it or find other property closer to the center of town, where we could actually pay for it. This, like Mr. Borowski, I just don't know how we're gonna pay for everything that we have coming, the leaking roofs and everything else that are gonna cost us millions. We don't even know where that's gonna come from yet.
Alternatively, then again, just for conversation, you know, it's because we're all friends here. We could very easily prepare a kind of a de facto budget that would take potentially 5 million into consideration and say, okay, here's what we're going to cut to pay for it. So here's what I think about it. We would have to pay, again, I'm just going to use a number for now. Let's just say $5 million. We either vote to increase taxes significantly above 2.5 to make that happen, or some portion of it via debt exclusion or an override, or we take the operating budget, throw what 10, 15-year bond for $5 million and say, all right, we're going to borrow within the levy limit. That borrowing is going to mean that we are going to cut in other places. And where would we want to cut? Because, you know, again, I don't know what those numbers would be, but if you're doing over 15 years, you know, I mean, I have to do the math quick in my head, but I mean, you know, it's still a significant, you know, chunk of change. That would mean that, yeah, other things would need to get cut. And we could have that conversation to say, can we live with these cuts? Because we really wouldn't want to touch the schools, quite frankly. I mean, I don't think there would be support for that. So once you remove the schools from the equation, inclusive of DCRSD and Baypath, was that around 50% of the budget? Yeah. So that's 50% of the budget right there. So we're talking $15–60 million that we can't even touch. So now the rest of the town's operations are all funded by $15–16 million. And we're going to have to cut a significant part of that, which quite honestly is going to mean service cuts, because I'm not, again, speaking myself, I'm not touching the fire department, I'm not touching police, and I'm not touching DPW because I consider that public safety. So you pull those off the equation. Now it's like, all right, what's left? Are we going to close the library? Are we going to cut town hall hours? You know what I mean? Like, as you get down that list very quickly, what are we going to spend on? So I'm happy to have that conversation. It's just realistically, I'm having a hard time finding where we're going to come up with, you know, $5 million over 10 years, because you're talking, well, obviously 500,000 plus interest in cuts per year. You know, if you bring it out to 15 years, it's obviously a little bit less, but you're paying more in interest. And we have all the other stuff coming on. So again, however the board wants to handle it, I'm happy to at least have the conversation. But my lean right now, Cindy, in the COA is that I don't know how it could be done without draconian cuts to the operating budget to make this happen. And again, just me, 1 out of 5, I won't support tax increases on this one. So rest of the board thoughts?
I do agree with Mr. Borowski on this. The question I have is, even though conversations have already begun, you know, obviously we want to do something. Is it beyond the point of being able to talk to people from LNG or Amazon to see if we can get any support from them to assist us in the senior center solution?
It's probably on that, those are.
Maybe I'll explore those avenues.
If we can even explore one of those avenues to see if we can get any kind of support to alleviate the financial burden. That's what they want to do.
I mean, again, I think we can have the discussion. It's just realistically what we're talking about. People should know this at home as well as with the audience, is that we're going to be talking around service cuts. That is our only option. And what that really means is going to be headcount, because that's where all the money really is. So we're going to, and again, it's an option. It's our town. We can decide what we want to do. What services do we want cut in order to build this? And that's a conversation. So, I mean, if we want, we can ask Andrew to come up with a pro forma type of, hey, here are some things that could find us again, a baseline of 5 million. Here's what around 5 to 550 in cuts per year.
Can we do
For
that for all
services.
our capital asks? What, and you put a random amount of money into this is how much in potential, only because I mean, the school roof, as much as we, everybody's kind of knowing what to spend it, but we can't destroy an asset by not putting a roof. It's our asset. If we don't protect it, that's bad decision making. I mean, as much as I've been talking for years, I'm involved in so many pieces, and I do talk to a lot of seniors all the time. And I understand the needs for the senior center, but right now it's not rain. They don't have buckets collecting rain. And I truly, my son was telling me the other day that when it drips, it's really annoying when you're doing work and you hear the drip, drip, drip in the bucket. That's not okay for in our schools, but projects like this that are, awesome. If we had all that revenue coming in, 2 or 3 years from now, we might be in a totally different situation and we can make, work on all the capital, but for right now, we don't have a huge budget. It's hard to cut something that big. And I don't think the residents would vote for it.
And that's why I said, I mean, is it worth the board to ask Andrew to come up with a base proposal to be able to say, again, I'm making up numbers, that if we had to cut $525,000 this year out of the budget, for example, what exactly would that entail?
So a proposal doesn't involve a commitment.
No, exactly. Yeah, this is just for discussion.
I'm just saying, so at least A, we would know, B, it would give Andrew an opportunity to see if either one of those avenues might be willing to maybe do a little something for the town on our side. Were there any other opportunities or options besides the old Charlton furniture?
There was another option. There was, I believe, a feasibility study going on for the two of them. For both this one and.
I mean,
the other option.
for a senior center besides those buildings,
Yes, there was another location.
is that still available or not available?
I don't know.
So I
Is this
think-
that's the church we're talking
So I think that one of the discussions that we had previously had with the Sonic Home was I think it was the Top Care Center, but I think we looked into it a little bit more, the square footage to meet the program needs of them. So I don't think it was as feasible of an option as we thought. There wasn't going to be an opportunity for the town to ever purchase that property, so it would be a long-term lease agreement after spending the money on renovations. So we kind of looked into it a little bit, but with at least the feasibility study aspect of it, we're trying to at least do a high level of try to figure out more of what the cost would be for this, but then we'll also look at understanding what our long-term capital needs are and how this may fit in. What would the cost be to renovate to the police station if the police station was to go to, if the police department was to go to a public safety building? And then also what would the cost be to build brand new at an estimated cost per square foot? So at least when we're looking at our long-term capital plans and whatever the next investment's going to be, we can take into consideration with the senior center.
So there is an opportunity a year from now, not what I know you want to hear, assuming money is now happening from the Amazon project and things begin to occur, a domino effect, where now other buildings are available.
We have, create a long-term capital plan because I don't think we've ever had one and actually followed it.
I will say, I mean, I've already said about, I will just reiterate that I am with Bill on this, but I would like to explore and I'd like to find out if one of those new neighbors might be willing to do something.
I
You don't
know
ask, the
there's
answer is no.
potential grants
Yeah, if you don't ask, the answer is no.
and, look for grants that may cover pieces of it. And,
I'll just say, in fairness, the only way to make this happen would be to put it on the May warrant, because it would have to be part of the budget. So we're literally talking all this has to get done, including decisions by this board to even put it on there within the next 2 months, because the budget that we would go into town meeting with would be, again, making up numbers, between $500,000 and $550,000 less than what we are now projecting. And
Should be
so,
able to find out Andrew's plan and whether or not the new neighbors have any appetite before that time. And if they don't, then.
If I were to guess, those deals have already been penned and signed. I don't think it's-
We don't get what we don't ask.
No, I agree, but you know, we're not gonna get $2 million.
so it sounds like directionally what we're asking is to have Andrew come up within, in all his free time. A pro forma proposal that would say, if we were to borrow over a 10 or potentially 15-year note, this is what would require the cuts.
What would the hit look like?
Yeah. I also caution this board, though, with the other things that are going to be coming that we might be looking to keep under our levy limit. We're gonna have to prioritize this versus others, much like I said last time. I'm not looking for a debt exclusion for the ask from the schools. So we have to find that with it. I mean, at some point, we can't just borrow everything, meaning even like under the levy limit. It is our limit. It is the only thing we can spend, and we have our operating expenses. We can continue to borrow within it, but that just means, and that might be okay, we're gonna keep cutting and shutting things down, because that's really what we're saying right now, which again, I'm okay with. It's just, let's make sure everyone in the audience and at home
And we see how
understands
the
that's the option.
majority, like, feels about, like, we lowered the tax rate, and even with the lower tax rate, if you looked at online, or if you walked in, ran into somebody, all people did was complain about the increase in taxes with the new assessment, even though the rate actually went down. So I can't imagine now saying, we need all these things, we're gonna, increase your rates again. I just don't.
But if
So
they
it-
saw a beautiful new senior center, they could see where their tax money was going, and it was invested wisely.
I'd love for people to reach out, because people always reach out to complain after the fact. But when more people reached out, if many people started sending us emails and coming to these meetings and say, we really want this, we would think about it a little bit differently. It's about the voters. That in the majority of the voters and what they want. So if more people reached out and let us know what they want, we can.
Wouldn't
think-
putting
yeah,
it
hold on
on
a second.
a town meeting warrant article,
I'd like to
let the
say that-
voters decide?
Well, I think it's one of two things, because first we'd have to determine the funding source, because there really wouldn't be a true article outside of the budget. And again, there'll be some nuances within it, because yes, it'll be a separate article for borrowing, but that borrowing will then impact our budget. So if 4/5 of the Board of Selectmen wanted to say, yes, I'm okay doing a 2.5 override or a debt exclusion, then that's one conversation. The other conversation is, are we going to borrow within it? And if that answer is yes, then that's going to impact our overall operating budget, which by its very nature is a pretty big, or potentially could be a pretty big deal. I mean, right, Andrew? I mean, like realistically, that if there were a warrant article saying that we're going to borrow a 10-year bond for the next, again, 10 years, $550,000, whatever it is, all that money as part of our line items in our budget are going to have to be adjusted accordingly. And so to me, it's not just saying, what do the townspeople think? Because we would have to do it probably in May as part of our overall budget. So.
Just
No, please, yeah, go ahead.
just a point of clarification. So what we would do is you'd vote to authorize the debt in 1 year, but the first payment wouldn't be due until the
Oh, the
next
next
fiscal.
year. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
so you would actually be in the next fiscal year.
Similar with the fire station.
So I agree with Bill again on the fact, I don't think we stand a chance at all of passing an override, so we're happy with our current budget. So that basically means the only way to do this then, because I do not see any tax increases passing the polls. We can't pass it for the schools, we're not gonna pass it for this. That means using what we have, and that means either Andrew's creativity and seeing what the pain points are gonna be, because we'd have to make the cuts, but at least we'd know what they are, and whether our new neighbor has any appetite. And if not, then we unfortunately, I don't think, have anywhere to go with it.
So we wouldn't have to make our first bond payment till May or June of 23?
Yes.
Really? I'm actually surprised by that. Well, there you go.
Full bond and pay when it comes due.
No, that works. All right, so that's still an option. However, that would mean that we'd be on the hook for all those years. please.
Yeah, I'd like to say something, might not go over too big here. But I reluctantly was voted unanimously, I voted against it, because I don't think we did enough research to find an alternative to Charlton furniture. And we're kind of being pressed to buy this thing before, I think it's May, before, around May anyway. And I watched some of the last meeting and some of the things that interested me. I mean, we have a space now, not the size everybody wants. But I think you mentioned that we need additional elderly housing. To me, that's right up there with the other stuff you mentioned, the police department, the fire department, you know. That's how I feel about it.
So Cindy, I know we have a 7:50, actually probably a 7 o'clock. I want to get John. I'm just gonna be honest with you. So I'm absolutely fine with doing some type of pro forma. Look, here's what it would take. Again, assuming this year's budget, knowing it's not gonna actually impact this year's budget, but it'll impact futures. But here's what it would mean on a go forward. I'm on this one, I'm a cynic. I'm leaning towards saying I can't support it, but I'm more than happy to say, hey, let's at least look at it. So does anyone have any objection, at least having Andrew come up with something to say, if in fact this were year one coming in May, here's what we would have to cut.
No, you and I are on the same page as far as how to make it happen if it was even possible, but I think for me, having that information lets me make it a more educated
And
decision.
it helps educate the residents also.
Cool.
So it's perfect.
All right, Cindy, you good?
Could I ask one
Is there a
question?
Oh.
time limit?
What's it, yeah.
I'm sorry,
No,
would there
Cindy.
be a time limit on when this information would become available?
Well, it'd have to be real quick. So because the warrant closes when?
First or second meeting in March.
Yeah, so it would have to be no later than, unless we call a special meeting, no later than the first or second week of March. Because, you know, that's when we'll put it in. So later, please.
Is it possible for all or any of you to go see the premises and see what we're talking about? My idea was to have this meeting down in the senior center where we have a freezer that is so loud. Most of us can't hear what's going on in our council on aging meetings. I said, let's have them come down here and have a meeting.
No, I'd be happy to go look at it.
But
And
to visually see it in the 39 parking spaces, and it would empty the bottom of the town hall, because we're thinking of chip-in also. You could reinvent the bottom of the town hall, come up with a lot of different spaces that you need too, and provide a lot more parking too for the town hall. So to me, it's just such a win-win situation, you know, other than the money, but whatever.
I was gonna say, I rarely speak on behalf of the board, but I'd like to go on and live and say, I think we're all empathetic. In that if we had the
We're all
money,
getting older too, by the way.
Trust me.
You're older
Yeah, we
than you
are.
were last time you met there.
trust me. That if we had resources available, I think we would absolutely have a different conversation. But I can't escape the fact, knowing what the capital needs are going to be over the next few years, and knowing quite honestly, many of our seniors who also use the senior center have reached out to many of us saying, stop raising my taxes. You know, I don't want to spend
Because they
more.
don't have a new
I want to
senior
see cuts.
center, you know.
But you know, that's a conversation I see on Facebook all the time. It's a conversation I get emails on that I'm on fixed income. Stop raising my taxes.
I've seen it.
So it's one of those things of saying, again, I can't raise taxes for this, or at least I won't vote to raise taxes on this. So now it's going to be cuts. And I'm very much a cynic on this one, saying that we're going to be able to absorb this plus the needs of the schools coming and everything else.
I think
Again,
there's grant money available. I know Sturbridge
if,
is going, grant money.
but can we make all this happen by May?
Oh,
Because anytime someone tells me that this is that, and again, this is not directed at you, Cindy, at all, but that this has to be done right now, whether it's a financial investment or whatever it is, I almost always walk away. Because I look at that and say, you're just not you, but the seller is trying to pressure me into buying this at a price that is probably might not be worth what it is. I'm not saying anything around Charlton Furniture, I'm not saying anything around the property. That as a member of this board, I won't be rushed into making a decision on this one. So that's why I say it has to be done by May. And if we don't have all of our ducks in the row, and if we're not, at least a majority of the board is not in agreement, I can't see how we could put this in front of the voters, but I think we have our direction. I think we've kind of talked through it. Let's see what Andrew can come up with. Again, assumption is probably between 5 and 550. What hypothetically that would mean out of this year's budget, knowing, and thank you for the correction, knowing that actually wouldn't be until next year's official budget. So Cindy, we good? Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in. Stay warm, watch that ice. Mr. Sanborn, always nice to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, actually, you know what? I'm sorry. Hold that thought, Joe. I think we had a couple, maybe a question from the audience. I mean, from online, my bad. So we get a little piece here. Could Mr. Springer speak up a little, please? First time anyone has ever asked Mr. Singer to speak up, so thank you, dude. Also comment that Sturgis voters just voted 11 million for a senior center. Yes, I did read that. Yep. Thanks, folks. Please drive safely.
Thank you.
John, sorry to keep you waiting.
Usually people ask me to do the
It's not
opposite.
I was gonna
past
say.
bedtime yet.
Okay.
So for those of you who don't know me, I'm John Sanborn, current chairman of the Board of Health here in Charlton. Here tonight to talk about the DEP and Pfas, private well sampling program. Online, we should have, and I'm assuming they are here, Mary Jude Pigsley and Mark Faldy from the DEP. So they'll speak more at length about this. It gets a little involved, and to be honest, a year or so ago, I didn't know anything about PFAS and what it meant. PFAS is a group of man-made chemicals used in a variety of consumer products and industries throughout the world. And exposures after it seeps into the surface soils, groundwater, and surface water. The exposures have been linked to a variety of health risks, particularly people who are immune compromised, women pregnant or nursing, and infants. So Massdp is looking at potentially testing wells in some of the towns in Massachusetts. There are 85 towns here in Massachusetts in which 60% or more of the residents are served by private wells. And that also encompasses this town. So there's an 8-page information packet that I printed out before I came here. Assuming Jim Philbrick is on tonight. Actually, I was going to join by Zoom, but I figured I'd come in person. So if this is not already out there on our website, the Board of Health, it would probably be a good thing to have out there, or a link to get there. There's a lot of information in here. It's not all encompassing, but for people who have questions about this and concerns, they're basically what you're going to hear shortly from the DEP is they're looking for between 20 and 40 homeowners here in town to volunteer to have their well water tested for these 6 compounds. In addition to the 6 compounds, there's also another 12 that they're going to look at that are not currently regulated. So this is starting to become an issue nationwide and really worldwide from what I understand. I don't know what else to add because I'm sure the experts at DEP have a much better understanding than I do, but that's the background. So if Mary Jude or Mark are on, can we switch over to them?
Yeah, please. Mark, Mary Jude, welcome to the show. Knowing that I earned a 12 on my high school chemistry final, if we could lay low on the organic chemistry, I think we'd all be better off. So Mary Jude, I'm gonna start with you.
Sure, and if it's okay, I'll share my screen. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. My name's Mary Jude Pigsley. I'm the Regional Director of the Massdp office in Worcester. I'm trying to share my screen. Let's see. There we go. Hope that's it.
If I can, you should have the ability to.
With me tonight are Mark Baldy. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Mark Baldy, who's the Deputy Regional Director for our Bureau Wayside Cleanup, which is the part of Massdp that deals with cleanup of hazardous chemical sites. And Paul Vigent, who is also in the Bureau Wayside Cleanup, who is our PFAS program lead for that bureau. I have about 15 more slides. I'm going to go through them really fast. I know that we have limited time, so I'm going to just put a lot of information out there. And if the board would like to have questions after, that would be great. We can come back, or we can take questions through Jim Philbrook, whatever your pleasure is. So just so that people have an idea of, I'm sorry, are my slides advancing?
Yes.
Okay. So PFAS are poly and perfluoroalkyl substances. It's a group of literally thousands of man-made chemicals that you may have seen in the popular media called forever chemicals. They are extremely stable. They don't break down in the environment. They're water soluble, so they stay in water. And as we'll discuss, drinking water is the main pathway of exposure for people to PFAS chemicals. And some of these 3,000 or so chemicals are very toxic. They are very slowly excreted from the body. There are developmental risks to fetuses, infants, pregnant women, endocrine disruption, and some kinds of cancer. So that's why we're concerned about PFAS. Common uses of PFAS, these chemicals were made. Teflon is the big one that there's been a lot in the press about, but it's anything that's nonstick or water resistant or grease resistant. And you can think of all these uses: microwave popcorn bags, waterproof shoes, waterproof clothing, upholstered furniture. The big one that is the source of a lot of contamination throughout the country is this firefighting foam, AFFF, aqueous film forming foam. And we've seen in Massachusetts a number of sites that are related to firefighting foam, either used as a result of a fire or stored and used at local fire stations. The bottom line is most people have been exposed to PFAS somehow throughout their entire lives, and it's actually most people in the world already have PFAS in their blood. The exposures of concern for PFAS are those sensitive groups that I mentioned: pregnant women, nursing mothers, infants, and immune-compromised people who drink or cook with water in a residential setting. So the things that we look at are the sensitivity of the population, the concentration in the water, and the frequency with which someone drinks the water. So there is relatively less concern if it's in a situation like an office building or a school or a restaurant where you don't live and drink the water, non-residential uses. You can brush your teeth with the water, you can wash vegetables, and if you are very concerned about any potential PFAS contamination, you can use bottled water. So having said all this, what's Massdp doing about PFAS? I could go into length on all of these things, but I won't. I'll just focus on the last one. Well, the first one and the last one. We've developed both drinking water standards and cleanup standard for contaminated sites. And then we also have these programs for free sampling of public water supply wells and some limited number of private wells across the state. So for this part, it's going to be important to think about where your water comes from. If you're on a public water supply, it's one that serves 25 people, even if it's privately owned, like a restaurant or apartment buildings or condominiums, you're a public water supply and you're regulated by Massdp. If you don't have more than 25 people drinking your water, even if you're publicly owned, it's a private well, not regulated by DEP. So there are different rules about private wells and public wells, and just keep that in mind. There are only 22 public water supply well systems in Charlton, and 10 of those, I think, have sampled for PFAS already. We can talk about that. So Massdp regulates PFAS in two ways. One is through the drinking water, through those public water systems. And the drinking water limit is 20 parts per trillion for 6 specific PFAS chemicals combined. When you do the lab test, you get more results in the method that we run, but there are only 6 that we regulate at this point in time. The cleanup standard for groundwater that is or could be used as drinking water is also 20 parts per trillion because it's water that is or could be used as drinking water. So the standard to keep in mind is 20 parts per trillion for the 6 PFAS chemicals. The MCL, which is the drinking water standard, became effective in October of 2020, and water suppliers had to start sampling at that time. There was no regulation of PFAS before October of 2020. And the level, the 20 parts per trillion maximum contaminant level, is based on those most sensitive populations. So in setting a limit that is low enough to protect those populations, it by extension protects everyone else. So public water systems had to start testing. The rule came into effect in October. We had a phased-in approach based on size of a water system. The largest systems had to start sampling last January. The smaller systems had to start in October, just past October. And like I said, there were 10 systems in Charlton that were required to sample. None of them exceeded 20 parts per trillion, which was great news. There are 12 more that are the kind of systems where people are not there every day, like a coffee shop kind of place. Those have until October of this year to sample. So we'll be getting samples from 12 more systems, and all of the system information, everything from a public water supply, is available online, not just PFAS data, but lead, copper, bacteria, everything that is sampled in public water supplies, that is public information available through a data portal, which if anyone wanted that information, we can certainly share that. So we also have this private well sampling program. We had a public water program where we paid for 1 round of samples for every public water system in the Commonwealth, which is about 1,400 systems that had to sample. We don't regulate private wells. There are no PFAS testing requirements for private wells, but we do have this program available for free sampling for up to 40 private wells in these 85 towns. The money is only available through the end of June. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how the program works, and again, run through it quickly. And we've been talking to Jim Philbrook. He has a lot of this information and can share it with people who are interested. So the overview is Massdp will pick 40 wells. They can only be residential wells, and only the property owner can sign up. So if you're a tenant, you can't sign up for that building to be sampled. It must be the property owner. The property owner will get a kit in the mail. They collect the samples, they mail them back to the lab. No one comes into your home. The program started during COVID, and we were thinking about having people come to the houses, but it's better to do it this way for everyone's safety. It takes about 3 to 4 weeks for the samples to be analyzed. And UMass, who is our contractor running this program for us, will send the results to DEP, to the Board of Health, and to the property owner. Just a caveat, which is why I put it in a red box. Once the Board of Health and DEP, as government agencies, receive that information, it is a public record, and people should keep that in mind. It doesn't mean we're going to post it on a website, but if anyone did a public records request for show me all the private well data that you collected throughout the state, that information will be a public record. So it's in the interest of full disclosure. So here's how you participate. There's a website that you can go to and sign up. And I think that information has been available for several months already. If you sign up, we'll send out postcards. They look like junk mail, and I apologize for that. So people who are interested in the program, look out in your mail for something that looks like this. It has Massdp's logo on it. It tells you how to get to the website to sign up. You go online, you complete a form called a notice of interest. We are working with Mr. Philbrook with the town of Charlton to figure out where we would like those 40 wells to go. 20 of them, we like to be in an area that we think we might find PFAS for any number of reasons, and 20 that are sort of random. The idea of this study across the state is to try to get an idea of where is PFAS in sometimes the more remote communities, the more undeveloped communities, because we have information from all the public water supplies. But what about places that don't have municipal systems? So we're trying to find sort of a mix of where we think we'll find it and where we think we probably shouldn't. The areas are selected, we will send out more postcards than 40 so that we get a good return on that. And if someone is selected, the sampling kit and instructions will come from UMass in the mail with the mailing package to send it to the lab. UMass then gets the information, gives it to the owner, the Board of Health, and us. And if necessary, we or UMass would contact the property owner if there were follow-up steps. And again, we don't regulate the private wells, so even if there is PFAS in the water, it's not necessarily anything that DEP would follow up on with you other than to share the information, because basically you are your water supplier, and any kind of treatment or other mitigation would really be up to you as the property owner. So this is what the notice of interest looks like. It's longer, it's a lot of small print. It explains all of the stuff that I just went over about the public information and what Massdp's responsibility is and what the private well owner's responsibility is. It asks you for some information about your well. If you have it, do you know how deep it is, when it was built? And then you check a bunch of boxes and sign it electronically, and you're off to go. We have a huge FAQ document on our website, and you can find it just by Googling Massdp PFAS private wells. You can find a lot of the information for private well owners. But the question that everybody wants to know is, what happens if I have PFAS in my well? What happens is we will do a second sample for free also, because PFAS are in so many things, like, Teflon tape, waterproofing on a field notebook or a jacket. There is a slight chance of cross-contamination. So we would take a confirmation sample just to make sure that what we saw is really there. So we would take that second sample. Anything that's over 20 parts per trillion does trip that cleanup standard that I talked about. So technically, it would have to be reported to Massdp as exceeding our cleanup standard under Chapter 21E. We're not going to make all these homeowners report to Massdp, but what we will do is report it to ourselves, not as a site, not as a cleanup site, but we are tracking where we find it over 20 parts per trillion. So again, we will have the information from UMass, and if it's over 20, we are keeping a record of that. Someone whose private well is over 20 parts per trillion may want to do something like use bottled water for drinking and for cooking food that absorbs water, like rice or pasta. There are whole house treatment units that you can put on that will treat all of the water coming into the house. DEP would act if the level of PFAS is over 90 parts per trillion, which we've identified as an imminent hazard level under Chapter 21E, where no one should be drinking the water. This is beyond the sensitive populations, but no one should be drinking the water. Massdp would take over at that point and have a contractor mitigate the exposure with bottled water and possibly an in-house treatment system. So I know I've talked really fast, but I know everyone is short on time. So if people want any information about PFAS, I strongly suggest going to our website, and you get there just by Googling Massdp PFAS. It takes you to a landing page that looks like this. You click on it, and there is just everything you could want to know: how we derived the standard, how the public well testing works, how the private well testing works, everything that you could want to know. And if there's something that you don't find there, you can certainly reach out to us. Jim Philbrook knows how to reach me and Mark and Paul Vigent, and we'd be happy to field any questions that people have about public water supplies or the private well sampling program. And I appreciate the opportunity to do this. And again, I'm sorry, I know I ran through it really quickly, but if you have any questions, we'd be happy to take them now.
All right, Jim, for such a complicated subject, you actually did a wonderful job, so I congratulate you on that. We have some questions. Select person Singer.
That over so it gets spoken to. Just one quick question, and I know we talked about and reading about it, and I was actually found the site already, but people who have the filter systems, the on-site filter systems, there are various ones. I mean, a lot of homes in Charlton have reverse osmosis for radon. I don't know if that helps. A lot of refrigerators have the like a charcoal kind of filter that you put in for your drinking water that supposedly takes out all kinds of things. Would that help? Even like the refrigerator? I know they talk about under the counter kind of, under the sink kind of systems that could help filter the water you drink. I assume those, or I don't, should never assume, would those be helpful in potentially alleviating that? What about those charcoal filters that you could put into your refrigerator when people get their drinking water from the fridge using those charcoal filters?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a little bit of a long answer. So the ROs, reverse osmosis systems, will take PFAS out. So if you have RO in your house now, it is likely, if you have PFAS in your water to start with, it is likely treating for the PFAS also. Massdp has a concern about RO systems that may be taking PFAS out of the water and putting it back into the ground. An RO system generates a lot of what's called reject water. We don't like the idea of an RO system just for PFAS, because you could just be taking the PFAS out of the ground and putting it back into the ground in a more concentrated form as a loop like that. But if you have RO, it may be treating for PFAS already. The main treatment for PFAS is carbon. It's really easy, simple treatment. Your refrigerator or a tap mounted unit is probably not going to do the trick. First of all, with any kind of unit like that, you have to do maintenance. And if you're not cleaning out your filter and taking care of it, it's not going to work. But there's an organization called the NSF that certifies things like this, including drinking water filters. They have not certified any kind of under sink on tap unit that will treat down to 20 parts per trillion. They have certified to 70 parts per trillion, which is EPA's current. They don't have a regulation, they have just a guideline, but it's 70 parts per trillion for 2 of the PFAS compounds. You can buy things that have an NSF seal of approval to treat down to 70 parts per trillion. If it's getting down to 70, it's probably getting down lower than that. It's just, I can't tell you, you can buy something that will treat to 70 parts per trillion. You can buy a whole house unit that's carbon based that would do that.
Yeah, Jim Philbrook may know this, I'm not sure, but I thought years and years ago, any new homes built after a certain year in Charlton, did they have to have an RO system? Was it radon or arsenic? There was something in Charlton that new homes after a certain date all had to have, or am I just way out?
Through the chairman, Mr. Singer, I believe anyone who builds a new home, you have to have a water test for quantity first. Once the home is built, then it's the quality. And that's when you get into the gross alpha and all the radon and all the parts and PFAS, maybe, which is not included yet, would indicate whether you need a deed restriction and a filtration system. A lot of homes that are built, not all, do require a full house filtration system, which is quite expensive. And this is one of my concerns today, is that we've always asked the residents of Charlton if we could test their water because of concerns of 1,4-dioxane or MTBE. This time, we have no solution as far as financial. It'll be upon them. So that's my concern. That's why the board has taken into consideration to say this would be a homeowner's decision, and that the board would not fully support of going out and trying to solicit areas for the DEP, but it's certainly a personal choice for a homeowner.
Thanks, Jim.
Questions to the board? Hey, Mary Jude, since I'm dealing with lots of hypotheticals tonight. So let's say you tested all 40 and all 40 came back as excessive. What happens then? Because again, purely hypothetical. If the town of Charlton had a significant problem with excess PFAS, does the state then come in and say, look, we're going to test a lot more? Or is it, you know what I mean? Like, what happens to like everyone else outside of those 40? Hypothetically.
The short answer is that the funding only allows for 40 in these 85 towns. You did the math, and we can do 40 per town. If we had a situation, and it's not hypothetical, where there are wells that are testing over that imminent hazard level of 90 parts per trillion. Massdp has stepped in to do investigations to try to figure out, first of all, where is it? We start at the wells that are contaminated and we go out, which I think is a familiar concept to a lot of people in Charlton. We start where we see it and we go out. And if there are other homes that have contamination, we keep looking. And at that point, when we've identified the people who have exposure and the exposure needs to be mitigated, we can then start trying to figure out where is it coming from. So this is all developing now in real time. So we are doing exactly that kind of exercise in a number of towns and trying to figure out where contamination might be coming from. At the end of the day, if you are a private well owner, you're responsible for your well, you're responsible for your water quality. If you live in a condominium association and the condominium is a public water supply, the public water supply has to treat the water to non-detect. So we have that regulatory authority over public water supplies. Private wells are up to the private well owners. The reason we would do source discovery, not only to try to find out where it's coming from, to mitigate the exposure by doing some sort of cleanup, but if there's a potentially responsible party who can pay to have the water treated, and again, a concept that's not unfamiliar to people in Charlton, if you can find a PRP, they could certainly be tasked with funding whatever remedial measures would be necessary.
Thank you. Usually does, Mary Jo. Basha.
Mary, what would be the cost of the testing if somebody would have done it on their own instead of using the funds?
It costs $350 approximately per sample. So if you tested and you got a detection and you wanted to resample, it would be another $350.
And
You have to use a lab that's certified by Massdp. On our website is a list of labs that are certified to run this particular method of testing for PFAS. You can't just get a water testing kit from BJ's. You know, you have to go through a lab that we've certified to run this method.
And the cost of the in-house treatment unit you were talking about, how much those things cost?
Mark, what are they running in where we're providing those for people?
Ballparkers, Mike.
5 to 10,000 in that range.
Up to $10,000 per
Yes.
unit?
Yeah.
So you said that in the full disclosure, so if somebody will run those tests, either if they run by you or they run by themselves, or the homeowner runs them by themselves, this is a public information, right? So, and then it's up to them to treat it or not treat it, but the information is still out there. So for the resale purpose of the house, this is a viable information and should be disclosed by the sellers to the potential buyers, therefore it depreciates the value of the house in a sense.
So if someone chooses not to use the DEP program, I don't believe they have to report it to the Board of Health. Some towns have adopted PFAS ordinances where you have to sample and you have to tell the Board of Health. I'm assuming that doesn't exist in Charlton. So that would not be public information unless they sent it to us. Whether a realtor would have to disclose that or a property owner selling property would have to disclose that, I don't know. I think you would have to consult with a realtor and find out what those industry standards are.
That would be public information.
The Board of Health would
The
handle
40
it.
would handle that, yeah.
If they go,
I just think it should be the person's individual.
they have to go.
Mr. Philbrook, you're being very formal and raising your hand, so go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think most labs do automatically forward all water testing directly to the Board of Health.
Thanks, Jim.
That means
Good to
you-
know.
So, Mr. Sanborn, what I'm reading or hearing is that the Board of Health isn't saying, and again, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, is that they're not saying don't do this. You're just saying that you're not, that the Board of Health isn't going to go out of your way to endorse the program, or is that an overstep? And correct me, I mean, I'm all in on this one.
General feeling of the board is what you just stated. Yes, we're concerned that if somebody were to go on out and say, hey, I know Charlton has some issues with water contamination, I should sign up for this. If it is over this 90 parts per trillion, then they could be potentially on the hook to have to pay for the system itself, plus the maintenance going forward. And again, as Barbara said, this could be potentially an issue if they decide to sell the house. So
So I'm gonna play contrarian for conversation briefly, that if there is a state program that will come for free and look at your water to say, you know what, you have toxins in your water, you might want to do something about this. I'm gonna look at it to say, good, it's gonna be my choice if I want to or not. But if they're gonna test it for free, I have no problem endorsing that, because if they choose not to do it, oh, okay. Now again, you know, that's just my 2 cents. You know, for example, if someone said, hey, Bill, there's mercury in your water, or there might be mercury in your water, here's a free test. I'll say, yeah, okay. I'm gonna do that test. But I am curious what the rest of the board, so the Board of Health is not endorsing the program. They're not saying don't do it. They're just saying, again, John, I don't want to speak for it, but that they're just saying that Board of Health did not take a motion to say, yes, we are behind this. Question is, does the Board of Selectmen want to go against the Board of Health and endorse this program formally, knowing we don't have to, because Mary Jude, correct me, people can do this program regardless. I think it's more of a advocacy position from the board. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think it helps when we've done these public presentations and then people have their elected officials to go to and say, well, what about this? What about that? You all can reach out to us. It helps the communication. We have had some communities where there hasn't been a huge amount of interest. We have been overwhelmingly subscribed in other communities. And it's certainly not something we're forcing. I wonder, Mr. Chair, if it would be helpful to the board to see the preliminary map that we've shared with the Board of Health about the areas that we would call areas of interest, and that would be our specific ones that we would choose, and then we would choose 20 other random.
We have it, but if you can share that for the folks at home.
Okay, it's going to be very small.
It's very small here too.
Yeah. We were just talking about
Can
the
you
seat.
see that? Can you see that at all?
Not yet.
So, Mr. Brown.
There we go.
Oh, that was, see, Mary Jude, you are way too quick. Yes, so.
And I'm sorry, I can't make it any bigger unless I zoom in, and then you can't see the rest of it.
Well, I think
So-
anybody familiar with the town map, I mean, Route 20 goes right through the center of town.
Yep.
Here, so it's pretty easy.
So
to
what
do.
I can tell you, what is shown on the map, the dots are the public water supplies that have tested already. And the green ones were non-detect. The yellow ones were detected, but below 20.
Gotcha.
The red one is the school that is not a public water supply anymore.
Cool.
So these would be the areas that you're concentrating in, where these dotted circles would be. This is
Yeah,
where
we
you're-
would
we're close to it.
try to solicit the postcards, from those areas. And again, we can only have 20 wells. So if all the neighbors in one area all got together and said, we're all interested, and everybody put in their postcards, that would eat up part of the 20 in a targeted area. And then we have 20 from outside those dotted areas. Nothing is required. It's just these thoughts about, are there specific property uses that we might think would have the likelihood of having used PFAS in the past, or some other reason for the presence of PFAS chemicals.
Cool. Thanks, Mary Jude. David, did you have a question?
I was just gonna say, I agree. I think we've at the same time supported the Board of Health, but we've already, just by virtue of having this meeting televised and on YouTube, where it's gonna be living forever. Makes hopefully any of the public aware, if they are interested, they can do it on their own.
Yeah.
So,
I will be.
so just let me ask the board this. A, if there's any other questions, either for John, Jim, or our friends at the Massdp. All right, Nina, obviously as well. If there's any, okay, no questions. The question is, would the board want to take a motion to endorse the program? And if the answer is no, much like the Board of Health did, that's fine too. Personally, I think we should endorse it, but I'm standing by my personal rule that I don't make motions while I'm chair.
I'm not sure that, I think the Board of Health has their job and we have our job, so I don't know if we should endorse it or what. I think publicize it and get it out there. Maybe even put it on our, our sign. If I was pregnant or immunocompromised, I would certainly want to know that this test is available and no, I mean, I know myself, we have arsenic in our well, and we have a very expensive system.
Everyone in Charlton is arsenic.
We have a very huge, like a room, just with a giant system that we have in our house to make our water clean, so it comes back like, perfect. It's a pain in the butt, but I'm glad that I know and that I'm not,
Yeah.
but again, I don't know if our board should kind of
So-
vote to endorse it versus publicize it.
If I may,
David?
so I do agree in the delineation, right, between boards. But I agree with you, knowledge is power. I think we can notify the public so they're aware of this program without having to endorse it. It serves the same purpose. We're not stepping on the Board of Health's feet. They endorse or don't endorse like them. We're just notifying the public, hey, there is this issue. DEP has made us aware. You can go to this website, apply if you choose to do so. And we have, it's basically, it's endorsing without endorsing, because we're big, but hey, it's the truth. We're basically letting everybody know.
Look, I've been on the losing side of like a lot of 4-1 votes, so I'm not gonna get on shade. So it's, unless someone is gonna make a motion, I think we're just gonna say thank you to Mary Jude, Mr. Bijan, and Mr. Baldy, and obviously Jim and John. Thanks for coming in.
So just one question for.
Yeah, of course,
Mr.
yeah.
Sanborn. So is this on the Board of Health's website, information about this, if people did want to look it up?
If it's not, I'm sure Jim Philbrook will make sure that it's out there for tomorrow.
He's
Okay,
already
so-
posting.
So
He's got it.
so we will have it on our town site as well as the select.
Here's Jim. Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman, we've posted this on our website before for the free testing for PFAS on the Board of Health website, and no one signed up for it. So
I
we will
just-
put it up, that it's free to anyone who wishes, if that's the will of the chair, who is sitting right there, to let them know that the DEP is offering it to people, and I'm sure there are some people interested in it, and they should be. But that's just something that we can post. We've had it on our website before.
Cool. Thanks, Jim.
Paul, did we get any people signing up from Charlton?
Yes, there were 50 people on the list.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
There you go.
51 now. I actually submitted the application. I actually submitted.
You're gonna be on the
application
waiting
just now.
list.
Yeah, right. He honestly, John, he's always.
Know about this before this, because I'm on the web pages all the time and I didn't even notice it, so I think that it's good that we're.
Right,
gonna put
a
it out there.
homeowner, personally, it's like for me, for my home, I'd want to know. And if
Sure.
my system didn't do it and I had to pay, it's not, I don't want to pay, but I would.
Right.
But I'm from Charlton and I wouldn't want to be forced to do anything. That's, so I'm.
That's the issue, I think, that the Board of Health has. There's nothing wrong with making sure that people have clean water. And I applaud the efforts of the DEP coming out and doing all this testing for homes throughout the state and all these towns. It's a massive undertaking. It's something that needs to be done. We're just concerned that homeowners could be potentially getting it over their head or not realizing. As long as they go through all the information, realize the potential cost that they could incur if they have a large concentration of these PFAS compounds, then that's fine.
Yes, and for the individuals,
We're not against it.
$10,000 for a system versus healthcare costs.
Yeah.
Not everybody.
All right, I think we're good on this one. Again, Mary Jude, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Mark, Paul, we appreciate it. Mr. Philbrook.
Thank you
always
so
nice to see
much.
John, thanks for coming in. I know it's
All right.
late. And again, my
Thank
apologies.
you.
All right.
Good evening.
Don't read it before my bedtime.
Honestly, it's past my
Oh,
11.
jeez.
All right,
Thanks,
so,
everybody.
thanks, John.
Thank you.
So my over under for us getting out of here was 8 PM, which clearly I was off. So we're gonna see how this works. We're to new business under the yard waste disposal program. Andrew, can we have the 30-second elevator speech?
Yeah, so we did, the Sustainability Committee had conducted the spring and fall leaf dump program over at the DPW barn last year. Had some use from residents, and we did have some vocal support for the program to continue moving forward. But the Sustainability Committee wouldn't be picking that back up. So I've had some conversations with Jerry about how a town-sponsored program would look, and kind of want to at least pitch it to the board. A couple of different options that we would have would be that one would be to use DPW workers at an overtime rate to sit down there for 4 hours on a Saturday to make sure that people that were coming were Charlton residents and dumping the appropriate materials. The other idea was to hire a leaf dump monitor at a minimum rate of like $15 an hour to basically do the same thing. And then DPW come in on Monday with the loader and take care of it. The maximum budget for this type of program would be about $2,000. And just want to get the board's feeling as far as whether or not that type of budget with those options is a program we'd like to pursue.
So I know many of us received many emails and calls and messages over the years around, again, folks like live on the lake, for example, they don't have any place to dump their stuff. I think $2,000 is personally short money for something that could be a significant convenience for a lot of people. But again, I defer to the board just for discussion and a motion or not.
I was actually a part of this program. I was actually volunteering for that, and there was quite a bit of people
I was
that,
just
that
gonna ask that, perfect.
I was, yes, and there was quite a bit of people that actually complimented that program, and they're very happy that they had that venue. So $2,000, I don't think it's too much.
Is this?
By the way, it's already budgeted, just so everyone knows.
Yeah.
This isn't. This isn't-
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. Is this an annual, this is only in the fall?
Spring and
Spring,
Spring
and
and
fall,
fall,
yeah.
yeah.
The Sustainability Committee has done a wonderful job over the years, and as we get thanks to the DPW for, saying yes to taking this on, assuming the board feels comfortable with that transfer. But again, I defer to the board on a motion. All right, a motion, do I have a second for discussion? Second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, that's unanimous. Well done. Next up, the scholarship questions. This one is relatively basic. Andrew.
Yeah, I'll give the elevator on this one too. So number of scholarship opportunities coming up. The board needs to set a question for the Nehemiah B. Stone Scholarship, Jesse U. Smith Educational Fund, and Wayne Colby Scholarship. Proposed to put the question of, in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, the future of work, education, and government has changed dramatically. Describe what you think were the most substantial changes to our society from the pandemic and how you believe people will engage in their community in the new normal. And then under the Edwin Phillips Cooking Fund, what role models in your life influence you to continue in the food service industry, and where do you see yourselves in 5 years? And then also, I just wanted to thank Mary. She went through meticulously and redid the applications to make it a lot more clear for applicants. So that way, it wasn't as disjointed as it had previously been. So just thanks to Mary on that.
Yeah, Mary, nice job. I'm not sure if you're watching or not, but this is a huge operational improvement. I still like who's your least favorite selectman, but I'm not falling on my sword on this. So thoughts from the board on this? I think it's wonderful that these groups continue to do this. And by the way, good question, but I like those. But thoughts on the questions, want changes?
Although I'm really sick of anything that says COVID, but it's a good question, so.
Do I hear a motion?
Second.
All right, David and Patsy, thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, that's unanimous. Next up, the round one of the Small Business and Nonprofit Grant Awards.
Yep, so 200,000 was allocated under this program, as with the Economic Development Commission being the screening committee. There are 4 rounds of funding opportunity under this program with a maximum grant award to a single applicant of $20,000. And the purpose really being for economic recovery due to COVID-19. We received 6 applications in the first round. The EDC went through and made some recommendations for award. The recommendations are $10,000 to the Raise Foundation, $8,000 to the Dudley Charlton Educational Foundation, $7,500 to CrossFit 1977, $5,000 to Charlton Youth Soccer, $7,500 to CrossFit Charlton, and the maximum grant award of $20,000 to the Charlton Beagle Club. And the details of each program and the requests and conditions of the award are outlined in the packet.
Good question. Do we have to do all 4 rounds if we do round one?
Do we have to, if we award all the money? Around?
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Rather, so round one came in at, I'm doing my math quickly,
Yeah.
I think it was like 58,000.
Yeah.
Do we have to do rounds 2, 3, and 4?
To get to the 200,000.
If you want to expend the
Yeah,
200,000.
But if not, and Selectman Singer, I know you had a question about this.
Yep. So my question, and almost a request to the board, would be to actually, with regrets, rescind this program. So this is almost $200,000 that we're looking to give out as grants from the ARPA monies. We have now since heard not only about the senior center, but the leaky school roofs and a lot of other serious needs that $200,000 could actually go toward, which could help alleviate the burden on the taxpayers. I think that, to me, should be the primary use of these monies to lower the potential ask toward taxpayers for senior centers, leaking school roofs. It's almost $250,000. It goes a long way toward helping the actual urgent needs that we didn't know about when this was conceived.
Comments from the board?
I just would not want to be the person who had promised something and then just rescind right next to it, you know, so what I would, but I get what Mr. Singer is saying. I would be going with maybe rescinding the round 2, 3, and 4, but not the very first one, because people put a lot of effort, believe me or not, and I know a lot of those people to actually come up and, and plead it, and we have already kind of promised at least the shot. So just by rescinding, the promise, I'm not good with that. I'm okay with 2, 3, and 4 rounds, sure.
So the topic of discussion, so Ms. Singer, I'm not putting words in your mouth, you're saying rescind potentially all 200,000.
Correct, because as much as I would love to see these businesses get that help, and I'm very much a proponent of small local businesses and helping our local businesses, I don't see how I have any chance in hell of asking the taxpayers for any money for a school or for anything else if I can give away even almost $100,000 in grant money to help small businesses, which we want to do and I want to do, when we all know we have capital needs that we can't pay for. And I think, to me, as much as I want to do it, there's no way I can go to the taxpayers with a clear conscience and say, yeah, we're using the money wisely. We know we have a $2 million hit on a middle school roof. We know we have this, but we gave almost 200,000 away, or almost 100,000 away. As much as I want to help the businesses, I don't see how we could possibly do that and ask the taxpayers for a penny.
And Mr. Roscoe, what I'm hearing from you is that you're fine with allocating, assuming we would agree on this, 58,000, but rescinding
The round 2, 3, and
the
4.
other 142
Sure.
that we initially allocated.
That's yeah.
All right, thoughts from the rest of the board? We're obviously in
Yeah,
different places.
I think when this first came up and we started talking about it and having the EDC go through it, and the EDC alone spent 3 hours of meeting going through these applications. The applicants probably spent, some of them had 4 or 5 bids coming in. And so we had $4 million in ARPA money come in. Even with the 200,000, we were still under $2 million. And we don't, based on the guidelines, we're not quite sure where we're going to spend that other $2 million. I don't know if we can put it on the school roof. I hope we could.
Well, the new
Yes.
say the new guidance under the ARPA program is basically that as long as the town delegates the funding as revenue replacement, because it can now get up to 10 million, that it can basically go to anything other than putting it toward pension funds.
So while I agree with Mr. Coronis, no one's taking away from any work that went into the application process from the applicants. No one's taking away the effort from the EDC. A lot of work went into it, absolutely. And we all wanted this to happen, all, myself included. But there are things we didn't know about that now we do. That just, to me, and I'm only, like Bill says a lot, I'm 1 of 5. I'm 1 of 5. My vote's no, simply because knowing what I know now, I would see it as fiscally irresponsible. Every penny that we have, we're talking about, well, we're going to make cuts. Well, by making these kind of expenditures, it ties our hands even more about what we may have to cut or what we can and can't do for the actual real needs of the community. So I'm not trying to take away at all the effort that went into this from anybody. And I originally supported it, but knowing what I know now, I just can't in good conscience.
Let me go over to Patsy. If you had anything, I'm sorry. If you don't.
No, I mean, I agree. I actually agree with Basha. I think that the first round, a lot of work was put into it, and they're all very reasonable. They all make sense. I'd be up to discussing the rest of the, round 2, 3, and 4. But I think right here, I'm good with that numbers.
All right, so let me ask a question for the board. Because we're gonna entertain a motion either way. Does anyone have any concerns with just what has been recommended for the amounts here? They seem very, and again, I think the EDC did a nice job on this. I don't have a problem with these amounts. So let me just state that. Does anyone have any issue with the actual 58,000, the way it's allocated?
The only things I can speak of, and this is me, I probably should, should or should not, but I am very involved with the Rest Foundation. And this is the electricity for the seniors that were just sitting here. So the seniors, there's no question about it, that they need our attention somewhere in the future as to the building and expansion of the senior center and everything. That the two groups of people that we should protect the most are the seniors and our children. So with that said, the Rest Foundation, this is all about seniors. And I can tell you how hard it is. There's 6 people on that board. It's extremely hard to raise the money to make sure that all the seniors that are applying to the grants actually get heating and cooling. The way I see it, the 10,000 is just a small ask in the ocean of the need, and especially now when we kind of have other needs to support the seniors or be against it. The Charlton Educational Foundation, that goes without saying. The emotional and all kinds of dilemmas that the schools are dealing with, $8,000, which will go direct to the grants. And I read all about it and all the letters that went with it. This is a fraction of what is needed or will be needed. So they asking, this is a very moderate ask. They're very modest about asking.
I suppose my ask though is for the board is that, would you want to adjust these numbers?
No, I think they're already at a minimum, and I can only speak for the ones that I know more about. I mean, CrossFit, I don't know much about, Charlton soccer. The kids need programs, and they did suffer because of the COVID. The fundraisings for all of those activities were cut. The people were kids were not playing, so therefore they were not raising money. And we all know that kids do need some outfits, especially now. They need to be out there and doing something, and we need money to support it. That's my 10 cents. I think those numbers are very, very reasonable.
So I'll tell you what, can we get I'm sorry, Steve. I was gonna ask for a motion, but if you want to.
Yeah, the reason, I mean, if you look at the way the EDC went through it, and they went through it in detail. And just take it like Riaz, they asked for 16,000. They were awarded 10. But if you weren't awarded what you asked for, you were allowed to come in at 2, 3, and 4. If you awarded what you asked for, you're not allowed to come back. So that's kind of the rule on that.
So they don't. I
don't like changing the rules halfway through, because the EDC had already made it, knowing that was very probable that Riaz was going to come back. I don't think it's. I understand some of the things that came up for expenditures after this $200,000 grant was announced, but
well, we have to make a decision tonight, quite honestly.
Mr. Chair.
So let's start talking motions.
So, Mr. Chair, again, I go back, nothing to do with promises or not doing hard work. And I honestly don't believe any one of these asks are excessive. I just don't think we have the money to do it anymore. So I'm gonna make the motion anyway. My motion is to rescind the grant program for the foreseeable future, because we have other needs that have come up that we're not gonna be able to pay for.
For the full 200,000.
Correct.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second for discussion?
Second for discussion.
We have a second for discussion. Honestly, I've kind of talked this one out. So,
Me too.
We just voted.
yeah, I was gonna say, so all those in favor of the motion to basically postpone / cancel the program and rescind the 200,000. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Chair votes against. That is 4-1 against. So now we're still back to the position of, what do you want to do around this?
Can I make a motion to accept the EDC recommendation? Is that
Yeah, for the 58,000 as,
for the whole 58,000? Yes.
okay, all right. So the motion on the floor for now is that we're going to approve round 1 as presented for the 58,000 broken up amongst the 6. So do I have a second on that?
I'll second for discussion.
I have a second for discussion. Let's talk through it.
There's other applicants that are becoming aware of this. still heavily looking at 2, 3, and 4. I don't like the idea of putting something out there and then rescinding it.
But that wasn't
I really,
but making the motion
but
isn't
in my-
rescinding, is that correct?
part of my, I mean, we didn't have an EDC meet for 2 years, and now we've got a group of good people there that did a lot of hard work, put a lot of hard time. So now we asked them to do this, and now part of the discussion was like, yeah, you know what, we were only kidding.
Steve, the only thing I'd say is that the motion on the floor is to approve the 58,000.
Yeah.
There would probably be potentially a subsequent motion to discuss the future of the program. But the one we're talking around right now is to say, are we okay with the 58,000? I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Yes.
Let's simplify, right?
Yeah.
Simplifies it.
So further discussion on just the 58,000 round one approval is probably the best way to think about it. All right. All those in favor of the 58,000 as allocated as within our notes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, chair votes aye. That's 4-1. So then I think the question is, what do we want to do for rounds 2, 3, and 4? Do we take a modified version of Select Person Singer's recommendation and rescind the 142,000 that's still outstanding? Or do we continue with the program like Select Person Cronus is saying that since it's already out there, it's only fair to continue? I don't know the word in your mouth, Steve, but basically that
Pretty much. What
that it's already out there. So thoughts from the board.
Do we have, so not, it isn't necessary that this could be used for the roof, or definitely we can. I kind of want to hold off on the future and kind of keep it. I mean, we originally allocated the 200. I would like to leave as is for now. Unless we have more proposals on exactly what we would do with that money. I don't want to vote and just leave it out there and be like, it's kind of hanging around, if that makes any sense. Unless there's another commitment that money will go to specifically.
But I think what I hear Steve saying is that there are other people who are readying applications potentially for rounds 2, 3, and 4. So I would recommend we either draw a line in the sand and say, we're not going to do 2, 3, and 4 anymore. Or we are, and invite the applications to allow people to continue
We prevent them
down the
from going
path. Yeah, because I would hate that.
Okay,
Exactly, yeah. So I basically think we're in the position of, do we continue with the program in some form or another for the 142,000? Or do we say, you know what,
We're gonna hold for now.
that 142 isn't going to happen right now? Maybe later it might, but for now, we're going to cap it at 58, and we could revisit down the road, depending upon what type of additional capital expenditures.
What is the
they
date for the second round? The end of March, was it?
I believe it was the end of March. It's scattered into 3-month increments.
How about this is just what I think. How about we move that date? Can we move that date, say, to after the town meeting? So we see the one who for the schools and everything, how that situation will shape. I just don't like to make the empty promises. We have been talking about it. We have been advocating for it. We have been all over the place trying to promote it. People are, hopeful. Everybody, whoever was serious enough, they already applied. Now we have the second wind for whatever reason, but we did promise. I just hate the person, the selectman that promises and they takes it away.
So do we have a motion either way? I mean,
I'm with Dave. I'm with David on this. I know if that would be up to me, I would give all of this to the school roofs because I need this is number one need. But it's kind of like, we in the middle.
When we started with this, I don't think we knew, we've known about the school roof for years now, right? There's no secret.
well, no one's officially given us a number though, so I'm going to defend the Board of Selectmen on that one. That we've been asking for a capital plan from our friends on the school committee for some time, and this is the first time that we've actually received a formal number. That's not throwing them under the bus. It's just we have been asking for a specific number, and this is the first time that we received it. So we've always heard through the rumor and that we've always talked about it, but this is the first time they said we need this.
With
we
an
need this
amount
money. Correct.
attached
Exactly.
to it.
And again, that's not a shot.
I'll leave it with, because you know where I'm going to be on this anyway. Every one of these organizations and groups are deserving. There's no question they all need it. But I'm going to be on the rest of it too, simply because as much as I want to help them, as much as they're deserving, we're gonna have to now go as a board explain to the other thousands and thousands of taxpayers why when we had almost $250,000 that we could have used to alleviate some other burdens on you, the board chose not to. And by the way, I'm just saying, do what you will, vote how you want. But there will be taxpayers, I promise you, who will approach you in the future and will bring this up and say, now you want to talk about cutting this, you want to talk about cutting this, you might not have had to have cut it as you made that change.
I think it's only fair to the applicants who are coming in round 2 to give, or even 3 or 4. thinking
So you
about it.
should tell them now.
Yeah, to give direction this evening. That's my opinion. We can table it and do what you want, but I don't think kicking the can down the road on this one is gonna help.
I agree.
I don't think my opinion is gonna change right now. So I would, if the board so is inclined, I'd love to hear a motion, but you know, we can table the conversation. But knowing that the round 2 is supposed to occur at the end of March, I think it's only fair to give direction to those folks who might be thinking of applying.
Right.
This is where, again, it goes back to it's always nice to march in parades and do everything else, but this is one of those times where we're probably gonna either make people happy or make people unhappy. So it's really dependent upon which way. the vote
Primary
goes.
responsibilities to every taxpayer in town.
I would just like to hear if anyone has a motion.
I made my motion and failed.
How about on the, well, does anyone want to make a
I'll make a
motion
motion
on the
to-
142?
I'll make the motion to continue the rest of the rounds with the original plan with the original amount of money. Go to do the four rounds as we planned.
Thank you, Patsy. Do I have a second?
I second.
We have a second. Any further discussion?
And knowing that you might not get to that 200,000. You might only get,
Digital.
you might only get another $40,000, $30,000 worth of applicants, even in the next 3 rounds.
And you know what, also too, just the one thing, just last thing, also by helping some of those businesses, as Beagle Club for once, we also helping out the Delta Charlton Educational Foundation, we're helping raise, because those people are more, willing to then help the others. So, by helping the businesses, we're hoping that they will give back to the community as it is.
They're amazing how they give back. Andrew, what was the cost for the police station repairs?
We allocated $200,000 to police station repairs.
So this would pay for that.
I'm just gonna have my quick 2 cents is that I was fine with the 58K as round 1 because that was, in a sense, procedurally, like, okay, people got their applications in and we're ready to go. EDC did a lot of work. Okay, we're fine. From this point forward, I'm actually in agreement with Select Person Singer that I think knowing the needs that the extra 142,000 could be spent elsewhere. But that being said, that's my 2 cents. I'm not gonna belabor it. Unless there's further discussion, I don't think anyone's gonna change each other's mind at this point. I'd like to call for a vote unless anybody else wants to. All right, hang on. So the motion is to continue with the program as is and allocate up through 4 rounds, up to $200,000 that we originally allocated. No, we might not hit that anyway. So that's the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Against?
Opposed.
Chair votes opposed, passes 3-2. Andrew continues with the program as is. Thank you. I think that was a very healthy discussion. Next up, the 2021 annual reports. Special thanks to Mary and Andrew for basically crafting this entire thing.
All right, so the reports attached, review and approve.
Anyone have any concerns? I know Andrew sent it out beforehand. Again, I asked Mary and others, and as part of my edits, to make it as simple as possible and straightforward, which is not usually. And this will go into the town meeting booklet. So I would love to see a motion to either approve or edit. The motion of David to approve as written.
Second.
Patsy, thank you for the second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That is unanimous. Andrew, I know we have old business, but we're gonna talk around this in exec session.
Yes, the plan on that one will come out.
Yeah.
Take a formal vote.
So just for those at home, we have some old business around an amicus brief on solar. We're gonna go into executive session, discuss it, and we're gonna come out and take an administrative vote. There's really not gonna be a lot of discussion coming out of that. No BOS committee reports, nothing on policy. Andrew, we talked about TA goals and objectives last time. We're looking at the second week of April to do Andrew's review, if possible, so please be around. Again, hope Izzy's okay. Nina, nice job on the thing. You gotta do the TA report. Other business that we need to talk about. I think we're good there.
One request. I'm
David,
sorry.
please.
Through you to Andrew, at an upcoming meeting, can we possibly get an update if there is one on the crumbling foundations?
Yeah.
Oh, good call. Yeah. even though Ann is now on to greener pastures.
It affects
I'll just get
it
over it.
affects a lot of homeowners in Charlton.
Absolutely. Good comment, David. All right, our next meeting is February 22nd at 6:30. Assuming there's enough business to talk around at that time, Vice Chair Whitlock will be chairing that, so that's no fun with that.
You'll be fast.
Even better. So what we're gonna do is go into executive session. We're gonna come out and probably take a quick vote on something. It's gonna be pretty basic. We'll try to explain it, but we'll see how it goes. So can I have somebody make the motion? That's even very well. with this.
I make a motion that we enter into executive session under MGLC, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation, sole amicus brief for NEC, if an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body, and the chair so declares, and to reconvene to open session for any other action if needed and to adjourn.
Well done. And the chair so declares. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, excellent. I'm gonna give it to Steve. Roll call vote, Pasha.
Aye.
Patsy.
Aye.
David.
Aye.
Steve.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We're in executive session. We are gonna come out briefly, but I promise you it's nothing exciting. Thank you all. We'll see you all on the 22nd. Nina, thank you as always. Drew, you're awesome. And let's take 2 minutes.